Awesome. I'm excited to get started. You made it. It's the final day of FinCon. I'm so excited to see you guys here. So I really do appreciate you joining us. I tried to kind of say a couple things so we check the sound and make sure we don't get any reverb or anything like that. We're good? Okay, great. Still hearing a little bit. I don't know if that's... Okay, good. He's fixing that, so that's wonderful. Alrighty, good. So this is From Blogger to Coach. So if this is not the session that you wanted to be in, then this is the time to check that.
Then you made a really good mistake.
Okay, but if you are in the right place, if this sounds like you. So if you're getting a lot of reader questions and they're just constantly coming in, if you're feeling like your information is lost in the sea of information that's out there, you know, the internet is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. If you want to increase your income, if you're looking for an additional stream of revenue or a new stream of revenue, and if you're tired of just teaching what you know and you want to actually, you know, kind of take your audience by the hand and help them move to, you know, this new area where they want to be, which is your area of expertise. So that's actually exactly where I was about 2 years ago. 2 years ago, right around this time, October after FinCon. I knew that I wanted to do more than just teach my audience what I knew. I was getting a lot of questions about how I had done what I had done, and how, you know, they could have the same success that I'd had starting my blog, growing an audience, becoming an influencer, and I kept getting a lot of the same questions. One of the first things that I did was set up like a Pick My Brain page, and I started doing, you know, a little bit of consulting that way. So what happened doing that, I ended up discovering this thing called coaching. And I've been able to generate a full-time income by helping my audience go from beyond just gathering information into actually taking action and getting that transformation that they wanted. So just to quickly introduce myself, my name is LaTisha Stiles. I'm a business and marketing coach for entrepreneurs who want to gain more clients online. And just a quick note, you can download the slides in the resource guide if you just go to latishastiles.com/FinCon2017. There's no email or opt-in required. It's literally just there. You select the event and then the slides are there, okay? Today we have a great panel. This is our expert panel today. They've all moved from blogging into coaching their audience, okay? And so they're going to be able to share their story and their success so that you can have the same for yourself. We have Bain, who's founder of Investor in the Family, Leisa Peterson, entrepreneur coach and abundance mentor. We have Courtney Sanders, who is entrepreneur, speaker, and rising authority on women's empowerment, and Abella, business coach for millennials. She's a speaker and Amazon best-selling author. Okay, so the final slide that I have up here, it won't change from this. It's just going to be the questions and kind of where we're going to go. Hopefully we'll have some time for additional questions at the end, but we're just going to go ahead and get started. So the first question is what usually most people want to know is, how did you get started? And so we'll send this question to each one of you so that you can tell us how you got started.
All right. So can you guys hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. Okay, so I actually started blogging back in 2010, before anybody realized you couldn't make any money doing it. I had just graduated from college. I'd gone about 6 months without a job at that point. Started freelance writing here and there to make a little bit of money. Started a blog to hold myself accountable because I realized I knew nothing about money, and even though I wasn't making very much, I had to learn how to manage it. So I was like, well, if it's only like 2 people, meaning like my parents and my cat reading my blog, like at least, you know, I'm being held accountable because I technically just told the whole world I'm trying to get my life together. So I have had that going for the last 7 years, and then somewhere around 2012, people started approaching me and they're like, oh, hey, you've been able to build this like really recognizable brand, you know, can you kind of help me figure this out for myself? I'm kind of into this blogging thing. I was like, all right, cool, whatever, right? Fast forward to 2013, I quit my job because I'm starting to make enough money from freelance writing and also coaching and consulting. And then people really wanted to know how I was able to do it. And then now in 2017, I think coaching's overtaking the writing income. And by next year, I'm projected to hit the 6-figure mark with a coaching and writing, consulting, influencer work. And that's how I got started and how I ended up where I am today.
We got started actually for some of the same reasons. So I got started on accident. I was a full-time engineering major in college. I had a scholarship, and I decided that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I did what everybody does, and you just stop going to class, right? And and pursue that entrepreneurial dream, which is a terrible idea if you're an engineering major, because that's one major where you can't skip classes. So needless to say, I lost my scholarship. I had no idea what I was doing with business. Ended up getting in a lot of credit card debt, student loans, all of that. And I found myself really stuck between a rock and a hard place, trying to figure out how I was going to climb out from that. So like you, I started a blog not to be a business or just to hold myself accountable. I started posting my goals of getting my school life together, getting my finances together, getting out of debt, and then getting back in business. And so I started to gain a little following as I was reading different personal development books and taking finance trainings and different things. I would share my results and, hey guys, I paid off this credit card, or I did this, or I was able to do that. And I started to get readers who were reaching out to me like, oh my goodness, I thought I was the only one. I'm going through the same thing. How on earth did you turn this around? Can you help me? And then the light bulb came on for me that this could be a business, where in my senior year, a large women's conference asked me to put together some curriculum for their their students who were coming in and were interested in entrepreneurship as well. And it was a 5-figure contract. And I was like, wait, you're gonna pay me to, to teach these girls something I learned in a book? Like, what? That doesn't make sense. Anybody could do this. But they're like, oh no, we want you to be our trainer. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. So I really just started to pursue that very hard. I did take a job after college, and I worked in the financial industry and government banking and finance, but always kind of built this on the side. And just continued to grow the audience. Eventually I started to put out an ebook and digital products and courses, and then that turned into coaching programs, and it just kind of blew up to the point where in August of 2016, I had a 5-figure month just that month, and then I put in my 3 weeks notice at work because I was nice, I gave them an extra week. And I actually left on Labor Day, which is kind of cool, last year. So I've been full-time for over a year now and just really enjoying doing this work. So.
Hi, I'm Leisa Peterson. I started coaching about 3 years ago and started my company about 3.5 years ago. I blog and I podcast. And I'll admit, when I first started my company, I did not think that I was going to become a coach. I thought I was going to focus on courses because I've worked in the money business for about 25 years. I'm a certified financial planner. I walked away from my financial advising practice to focus more on helping people fall in love with money, because I knew that most people aren't. There's this idea of greed and all this other stuff that people get worried about, and I could tell as a person who had worked in the business for so many years that there was a lot of healing that needed to happen in people's relationships with money. And so I didn't know how I was going to go about my mission, but after I started my classes, people started coming to me, and I think that a lot of, especially when you're doing this as chapter 2 or chapter 3 in your life, and you go into a new space like this, I didn't have a lot of confidence about online marketing. I had worked for big companies before this. And so it took a while of people asking me to help them to realize that I actually had a lot more to offer in my own experience base, because I had been an entrepreneur with my husband, self-made millionaire by the time I was in my mid-30s. And I threw all of that out because I thought, oh, well, that's not this, so I must not have much value to offer. But after a while, people started asking me questions, and I'm like, wow, I actually can really help people. So eventually, now my business is very life coach for entrepreneurs, but once we do the emotional stuff, then I help them in transitioning to create their business the way that they really want it to be. Thank you.
So my name is Bain, and I started my blog, I think it was 2013, and the focus of the business was my company's Investor in the Family, and the focus of the business was I was getting into investing to kind of take care of my family's finances more better, and I realized I know a ton of other people who are in a similar situation that I'm in, who don't have a finance background and have no investing is this big black box and don't know what to do with it. And so and those people would love to have an investor in the family they could go to and talk to and get advice from and stuff. So that's how the business started. And as I was trying to grow my business, like probably everyone here, I started diving into online marketing to figure out how do I grow this, how do I build a business, how do I structure all the dynamics of it. And as I was doing that, I also started a podcast 2 or 3 years ago, and I started interviewing other investors. And what ended up happening was I realized I had a client base that I didn't realize, because while I was interviewing all these investors to learn from them, what I found is all these guys, men and women, they're really good at this one skill, but they don't have this online marketing business skill that I've been working to foster for years. And over time, they started viewing me as a person to go to ask questions of and stuff. And so that's ended up building into that's what my coaching business has become. And so what I do now is I come alongside those investors and I basically help build out their business plans and their marketing plans. And then I'll help operate their funnels and kind of like their marketing department stuff.
So I think a lot of times the next question that we hear often is, what kind of certifications do I need? Am I even qualified to coach people? And so I wanted to throw this question to you, Leisa, and also to you, Amanda, because I know, Leisa, I know you have, MBA, CFP, and how that's helped you, or if something that you needed, or let us know about that.
Yeah, so I think that the CFP gave me confidence that I had some letters after my name when I first started, and maybe people would think that I was smart or something. But I will say that I haven't really used it that much, because once I got into the emotional area of money, it's a natural for me. And so it's like I wanted the legitimacy to show up and look smart, but actually my gifts are something that are very invisible when people first meet me, but when they spend time with me, they realize that I have these deeply intuitive gifts. And it's taken me, I continue to step into that because it's so uncomfortable coming from the financial world where nobody wanted me to talk about that stuff. So I had a lot of emotional baggage that it was wrong to show that I knew things about people that they probably don't even know about themselves. So it's been a confidence journey for me over the time of coaching. I actually love coaching so much because when people come back and tell you that what you're saying to them is helpful, it used to actually cause a lot of problems when I would talk about it, but now people pay me for the things that used to cause problems because they weren't paying me for it, and I was just giving advice. So it's awesome.
Amanda, what about you?
So I am a certified life coach. I did an 18-month program a few years ago. If you would have asked me a month ago, do you need certification? I would have said no. If you ask me now, it's still kind of a no. And let me explain. So for me, I found when it comes to the online marketing, the sales, the business, the actual brand building, that's all come from experience, either from my last job where I worked as a recruiter. We were basically the middleman between candidates and Fortune 500 companies. And my former boss and I still joke around that basically was my MBA, was that job. And then also just, trial and error and trying to figure this thing out for myself. Sometimes the best teacher is experience. And I feel like with certification programs, you don't necessarily get that. However, where the certification did help me is, like Leisa, I'm also pretty intuitive. My private clients will tell you that. I can pick up on stuff. I know what's not being said just as much as what is being said. And that was actually a skill that I learned. I already had it, but I think I kind of fine-tuned it through the certification program. So in my business, it's very similar. They may come to me and they're like, oh, we want to know about funnels and online marketing and brand building and pitching and getting in the media and this whole blogging world. But oftentimes with my private clients, the first 3 months are just going to be mindset. Just that whole mindset around money and healing that relationship and figuring out what is going on there, because a lot of people self-sabotage. And then once we get that out of the way, then we can start going into the more tactical business stuff.
We also hear the question a lot, how do you know what to sell? And I think we talked a little bit about idea validation a little bit and kind of developing your program. I know Courtney and you also, Brian, I'd love to hear from you guys to hear, how did you figure out what you were going to sell?
Yeah. When I first got started in terms of thinking about products that I wanted to offer, I didn't know how people were making money online. Like, I would see all these people on Instagram and everything, and it was like black magic or voodoo or something. So well, yeah, in a way. But I did what I could see that they were doing, and at the time, it seemed like everybody was like hosting an event. They were all like, "Oh, I'm doing a tour. I'm gonna be in your city," and I was like, "I need to do that." Maybe they're making millions of dollars by hosting these little events. So I hosted my first event, and it was okay, and in the sense that I had like a 30-person turnout or whatever, but it was not financially successful in that I lost $300. So that was like, a fail in that aspect. But what was really interesting was at the event, people were asking me a lot of questions, particularly about goal setting and different things that they could do for the new year, because I had held the event in November. And so from that, I went back and I crafted my first digital product, which was my ebook. And that sold well. That actually, I made my first $1,000 online just selling an ebook, basically answering the question that the women that came to my event were asking me. So I'm a big believer that your first products, just ask your audience. And you don't necessarily have to ask them, but just kind of hang out in the rooms that they're in, whether those be physical rooms like this one or virtual rooms like Facebook groups, etc. And the questions that they're asking over and over again, ask yourself, is that something that I can answer in the form of some sort of product or service? And then just put it together and put it out there.
Kind of the way it evolved for me was I read a book called 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. Some of you may have read that, and he talks about the idea of don't create another business like everyone else, but try to become a monopoly even in a really small market. And as I was getting into podcasting and really enjoying it, I noticed a pretty large market in my industry that did not have, that was just all text, it's all blogging. And I thought, what if I made it my goal to become the voice of this sphere? And so I just started interviewing people who were popular on that platform. Like I just did over and over. I kept interviewing people and getting to meet them and stuff. Again, all the while as I'm learning to build my own personal business from a marketing and just business design perspective. And as you're learning a lot, like we do here, and you start looking at like this person's webpage, or they don't even have a web page, or you look at how they're selling their product and how they're positioning, and you're just thinking, like, anyone at FinCon could do better than what you just did. And you're like, right. You have like this huge following and all this kind of stuff, and like anyone at FinCon can point out like 100 things that are wrong with like your core page. And so I thought, that's interesting. And I kind of played around with the idea a little bit as far as how could I help people, and I thought about what about a one-off package where I'll build someone's sales page, and I kind of created different packages and stuff. But then a lot of people thought, well, I don't want to give money because I don't know if it's going to work yet, and you get all those responses and stuff. And so and again, that was on the side as I was continuing to build my business. But what ended up happening was I hosted a couple of online summits in that community, and that created a pretty meaningful splash, and it established me as, okay, he's doing something totally different than what we've ever seen in this sphere, and it seems to have gone really well. Okay, and they started thinking of me as a go-to person for marketing and business building, and so that gave me the credibility factor to come back and say, hey, I want to work with you. And I mean, we usually do the way I'll usually structure things, maybe I can't see the questions, maybe ahead a little bit, and so now we do like an upfront flat fee to get started, and then a percentage of revenue. And so that way, for them, it's an easier buy-in. Like, unless I do well, no one wins. And so, but it's a lot of incentivized, obviously, for me, because, ongoing share of revenue is pretty cool if it works out well. Yeah. So.
It is. So a lot of times when people hear the word coach, there's different connotations kind of running around. Sometimes people think coaches, the rah, you can do it. Some people see it as somebody who's taking you by the hand. And so I wanted to kind of ask you guys, especially when there are a lot of, big names online that are always saying, start a course. Mm-hmm. What's the difference that you see between creating a course and coaching, where we're sort of taking your audience by the hand? Or if you have structured what you're doing in a course, how do you feel like what you're doing is either different or the same? So this question will go to everyone.
So I have courses. I have hybrid course between coaching, and I have actual private coaching. So with the courses themselves, I just make the course, put it on Teachable, sell it, and that's it. I don't have to do anything, which is scalable. And that's usually on like a very particular topic. Like for example, I'll get asked about freelance writing a lot. It's related to what I teach you in private coaching, but it's just like one small aspect of it. So it's a very specialized course. Then I have a hybrid, which is like my group program, which is a 6-week program, and they have lessons on video every single day for 6 weeks, and then once a quarter, I, go through the actual program with them, and they can get on the phone with me and do office hours and all that kind of stuff. From there, depending on what I see is going on in the group program, then I can upsell to a retainer coaching package. So these go from 6 months to a year of just weekly coaching. So the difference really between like the first, which is the courses, is they're totally hands-off. And then kind of as you move up the ladder, then obviously it's much more involved, which means it also costs a lot more money. I think that's a mistake a lot of coaches make. It's definitely a mistake I made in the beginning. I didn't realize I'm giving you my time, and that's the most valuable thing I have. So when people started coming up to me just like asking random questions, because it was so easy to me, I would definitely like not charge enough. And now that I've actually built out the whole funnel, now I can see like the different price points for the different sort of packages that you can offer as a coach.
I would agree. My setup is pretty similar. I think coaching really sits in the middle of maybe a consultant and a teacher, where a coach is someone who's doing something with you. A teacher is going to teach you how to do it yourself, and then a consultant is going to do it for you. So in my marketing, I use a lot of acronyms like the DFY, done for you, DWI, done with you, and then DIY, you do it yourself. I like the coaching space because I feel like it gives you the most flexibility to move up and down that ladder. So as a coach, and you're doing things with your clientele. So for me, that looks like I have a membership and mastermind community where I have 100 women who are communicating with me on a weekly basis. They get access to training. There is some touch points, and I'm doing things with them. And then I have done you do it yourself type courses. So that's where I'm explaining a process for you to achieve a particular outcome, or I'm teaching you a specific topic where you can walk away more knowledgeable about that area. But then there's also the consulting arena. And so recently I kind of like started my business in this and then left it and then got back to this, moving more with working with corporations who want me to do it for them, which is train their millennial women on various topics. And so typically if you do the DFY, the done for you model, that's going to be a higher price point. Corporations will pay anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 for me to come for 1 day, sometimes 2.5 days, just to do a done for them training model when they're looking for their employees to get a particular result. Done with you coaching is usually where you're working with people one-on-one. It's consumers, so the price points they're not always that high unless it's over the course of a year or something where the time period is more extensive. And then typically the do-it-yourself type courses and products and different things tend to be at a slightly lower price point, so maybe a few $100s or even in the tens of dollars, but it's highly scalable, like you mentioned. And so really you just have to figure out what's your comfort level, how much bandwidth do you personally have. This was a big question for me when I was working my full-time job. I can only take on a certain amount of one-on-one clients, so I found myself doing a lot of the DIY type courses because I was able to kind of scale that via funnels and things. And now that I'm full-time, I'm moving more into the done with you and done for you time services because I have the time for that.
So I work with a lot of people who have had a great deal of success in one area of maybe in a business, and they're pivoting to find their passion rather than it being just about the money. And so the most important thing that I do in my coaching is get to know the person very, very deeply and understand what makes them tick, what's important to them. So even if they're coming in, if they're working one-on-one with me, or they're going to come into a group mastermind program, I am making sure that I really, really understand them and I can help guide them through the programs that I offer. I also will add that something I've learned along the way of testing, and I'm one of those people who I am constantly trying different things and then throwing them out and then reinventing them, because I find that a lot of us are making this up as we go, and it's been very successful for me to continue to improve what I offer. One cool thing about that is I have people who have been with me from the beginning, because they're like, you're just always staying a few steps ahead of me, and I'm learning so much from your evolution, because I don't stick doing the same thing over and over, which is cool. But the other thing that I've found is there is a dynamic that happens in groups that is so profound with money in particular that cannot happen in the one-to-one relationship. I actually feel like it's more, it's actually really difficult. Many people don't feel comfortable doing the kind of work that I do with my clients in a group setting, and so not everyone can handle it. But when they do decide that they're ready for it, the changes that happen when they come forward with their shame and their guilt and all the baggage, by the way, sex and money are deeply related, and I've seen that in the work that I do. So when they come into a group setting and they start to work almost, like a mastermind with me as the leader and the teacher, the transformation is significant. I just wanted to add that, because if you're thinking about these things, it's very interesting how, somebody may pay a lot for one-on-one coaching, but it's actually a more advanced and cheaper often model to be in a group working with others. And it's been a huge win for me.
Mine's a little bit unique because I've got, I guess like each of you too, but the business to consumer side of my business and the business to business side. And on the business to consumer side, I focus on courses and training for investment education, but I don't have specific coaching. But then on the business side, I don't have courses, but I do coaching. But I can speak into it, and I don't want to repeat. You've all said great stuff. As y'all been talking, I keep thinking of this statement that Warren Buffett made about investing specifically, is that really if you want to be a successful investor, you don't have to be brilliant or that kind of thing, or have some amazing degree or insight. You need to have a quality plan and then just stick to it, And I feel like what most courses do is they give us the quality plan. But if we're all honest, we all have bookshelves with books we've never read. And if we read them, we didn't apply it. We all paid for courses we haven't even started or definitely haven't finished and haven't applied. What coaching does, so we have all these plans all over the place, but the execution of it is like what really matters. That's why we come to FinCon. That's why we have all these relationships, and coaching is able to bring that dynamic into it. Because I was just joking with some people here at FinCon, like telling them the things I'm struggling with in my business, and I'm like, I know as I'm saying what I'm struggling with, I know the answer. And if one of you came to me with the exact same problems and say, oh, here's the solution to what you're dealing with, so what's my problem, right? And sometimes it's like we're designed to need each other, right? Like we all want to be that solo person. Like it doesn't exist. Like we all need each other, and it's kind of, we're designed to need each other that way. And I think coaching brings it together really well.
So I think the final question before hopefully we'll have some time for questions from you all is essentially the elephant in the room, which is, okay, so how do I actually get clients? And so I want to go into kind of talking about how you're marketing to your audience. If you guys take a look at the slides, I think they're also inside the app, but also when you download them, we'll have a little bit more details on how they each individually bring their clients in. So when you go through, you'll be able to kind of see what the starting point is and kind of where everybody goes next. So that'll be in the slides. But for now, I'm just going to hang out on this one right here. And we kind of start with your readers or your general audience, filtering down to those people who are actively looking for a solution, then the people who want to work with you specifically, and that is what brings in your new clients. And so how are you all finding is the best way to market to your audience? And Amanda, I'm really excited to ask you this question in particular because I can see the excitement on your face.
And LaTisha and I have worked very closely together, so she knows what's going to come out of my mouth. So Instagram is my new boyfriend. But in a serious note, can I just get a show of hands? How many of you have been blogging for a while?
A while meaning
I don't know.
years?
Maybe sorry, good point. Like a year maybe? A year? Okay, how many of you have been blogging like 3+? All right, how many of you haven't even started at all? Okay, so we got like a pretty good mix. So what I have found is because my name had been out there for a while already, I didn't have to push so much new blog content out there, especially because I was also a freelance writer. Do we have writers in the room? Freelancers? Anybody? Okay, right. So the cool thing about freelance writing for me was I was basically getting paid to promote myself. So after a few years, my name was literally everywhere. So what was really interesting is that this year I made a really big shift, and I stopped focusing so much on like always pounding out new content on my blog, and instead I started getting very strategic. So whatever I put out on social, right, is leading someone to an email list. From the email list, I market almost daily to get them on the phone with me, where I then, depending on the situation, but lately it's mostly been for my group coaching program. And by doing that, I was able to make $10,000 in 2 weeks, just with like that very simple funnel. And just last week on Thursday, I had a new student come into the group coaching program, paid the $2,000 up front in full. She found me on Instagram, opted into my list, and went through that entire funnel. So it's really not that hard, I think, is the point that I'm trying to make. I think there's a lot of conversations out there right now in the online marketing world of like this funnel and that funnel and making it super complicated and all these graphs and things. Like really social to email, provide good content in that email, get them on the phone, sell them. And that's all you really need to do.
Brian, throw it over to you since we've been
I was
coming to you at the end.
Just waiting for it to flow my way.
No, you're up.
So basically, just talking about our funnel and getting people into the
Yeah, how are
process.
you marketing your business to get clients?
Well, I mean, I tell people, 'cause so I'm sure there's a lot of podcasters here in the room and a lot of podcasters here at FinCon, and I obviously have a podcast. And I tell people if no one ever downloaded one of my episodes, it would still be a really successful podcast in the sense that because I do it, fortunately people do download it and that's nice, but it's all about networking for me. I started doing it because I wanted a way to talk to successful investors so I could learn, and then my audience can live through that as well and learn as well, and that's been really helpful. But that's a networking tool for me. So I get on the phone and start talking or get on the podcast and I get to know these other investors and start building the relationship that way. And then may do a couple podcasts with them, or may have them come and join me on a summit, which is just another podcast, but behind a paywall. And that starts kind of building the relationship that way. And over time, they see my work, and I kind of see their work, and I'm able to approach them and say, hey, here's what I'm doing for these other investors, and I'd like to talk to you about maybe bringing you into this network that we're developing and building. As far as getting started, I call it the Russell Brunson approach, which he didn't invent anything, but he made it all famous.
Yeah.
And like he says, if you want to start something, and we've kind of heard this from y'all in different ways, just do it for free for someone, get them good results, and then that's your case study. And then, you asked about credentials, and Leisa said, well, I'm a CFP. I'm like, well, the thing is, I don't want to be a CFP, but I do want to be a millionaire in my mid-30s. I missed it, but so that is that your results are compelling more than the title. And I think that's the same thing. So if I've gone through, I get through all these digital marketer certifications that I've gotten or whatever else from finishing courses, but no one cares unless I can say, hey, this business is now they've increased revenue by this much or whatever else. Then everyone is interested. And that's, and like Amanda said, it's simple, but it's not necessarily easy because it is hard. You have to get your piece of but it's a very simple process, but what happens is you're going to create an element of your funnel and nothing's going to happen and you're going to think you messed up. But your process is probably exactly right. You just have to keep tweaking things and figure out, maybe how I'm getting people in, I'm not doing that right. Or maybe each step of the funnel, maybe they're dropping off on one step or whatever else, you keep improving it. Because you could be one tweak away on your social, on your Instagram, how you're doing Instagram, or one tweak away on that email from upping your conversion rates by 50%.
Yeah, and actually I want to add to that real quick. One of the things that I teach my students very specifically is how to pay very close attention to data. So my business manager is here, she can attest to this. I will have her pull up the best performing emails and I will deconstruct them and if I find something that works, I just stick to what works. I'm very much into the Pareto principle lately. 80% of results come from 20% of your actions, and it is so true.
And one more Russell Brunson thing, sorry. One of his whole things he builds his business around, or the way he sucks people into his world, is he has these little webinars about, he calls it funnel hacking. And he just talks about, okay, find someone who's successful and just copy what they're doing. I mean, there's not many original, you don't have to be super original in what you're doing, but like say, okay, here's what they're doing, here's their copy. Let me create a web page that looks just like that and create copy that's very similar to theirs, but it's more me in it, and then just start, and that's your starting point. And then you just kind of keep working it, and you may change it a ton, but then you can start. And that's what I think what catches most of us is we just don't actually get to that point.
I funnel hacked LaTisha. And then I just tweaked it.
Courtney, what about you?
For me, let's see. It's changed a bit as my business has grown. But I'd say the running theme is being content heavy, but not in the traditional way. So in the beginning, I was content heavy and like, your typical blogger. I was trying really hard to write 3 to 4 posts a week and all of that. And that was helpful. I had a, small audience that I could launch my ebook to, and that kind of spurred the original product. But then from there, once I did the ebook and I started getting into live workshops and then classes and things, since then I found what works really well is what I call innovative content with a funnel like attached on the back. So I like to be creative. I like to do things in a really different way. So I always try to ask myself, I know I could do like a webinar, and I do them, or opt-in or some sort of freebie, but how can I create like an online event that has a lot of engagement, that's a lot of fun, and then attach something to the back of that and then market from there. So I've done everything from several day challenges. I've done like 3-day challenges, 5-day challenges. I've done a lot of partnerships with contemporaries in my space, and then we've combined our audience. I've done everything from like a mixtape. Like, so I have a podcast too, and everybody kept saying like, oh, I listen to your podcast like constantly, even like old episodes that I've already heard before. And so I came up with the idea to get a theme song for my brand, and then to chop up the podcast and like add music to it. And it was really cool. I was pretty proud of it. And everybody, they really liked it. And so, I just like threw a funnel on the back of that because everybody was signing up for it, and they were like, this is so ridiculous. I've never heard of anybody. You have your own album, that's cool. So I just try to do like really creative, like crazy kind of innovative things, and then put that on the front of a traditional funnel where now they're on my email list. I have a really strong welcome campaign that I've been running for like years, and it performs really well, where they get in and introduced to a lot of my other content, and then I'm offering them a low ticket type product, and then they can ascend from there. And I find, and I know there's like sometimes people are like, oh, you don't have to do the like tripwire thing and all that, and you don't. But I find what's helpful for me by putting a lower end product first before asking somebody like, hey, do you want to join like, a high end coaching program, is that a lot of times people will reach out to me after doing the low end product because it got more results than what they expected. So typically, if you take like a $50 thing or a $97 thing, you're like, okay, this will be helpful, but you don't expect it to be like, wow, this is really helpful. But I try to give like way more than what I'm charging, so that becomes my marketing thing. So I actually got into like actual one-on-one coaching and group coaching because people were doing my digital products, and they were like, can you like teach me, can we work one-on-one? Like, do you have some sort of coaching program? I'm like, really? Like, you want me to coach you? Okay, I guess I'll put something together. And so I find that my lower end products sell my higher end products, and I've kind of created a really cool ecosystem with my brand where I have like repeat customers. And so, the cool content and engagement gets new people in the door, and then people who come in, they rock with me for like years, and they're like, oh, I remember when I took your 21 thing this, and then now I'm on your membership, and then I did coaching with you last year. They just kind of like ping all over to everything that I'm offering. So it's kind of my strategy.
And Leisa?
Yeah. So I'll be honest, the idea of throwing a whole bunch of spaghetti up on the wall and seeing what sticks has worked really well for me. That is embarrassing to admit, but Farnoosh said something yesterday that was really interesting to me. She said that, if you really, especially if you're trying to position yourself as a unique, viewpoint leader in a marketplace, it is about being prolific with your content. And I feel like I am good at creating blog posts and podcasts and being in a lot of different places. I get asked to be interviewed quite a bit on podcasts, and I can't every single person who's come to work with me has come from like one of those, even though I'm on episode like 180 on the podcast. It's weird. But what is interesting, though, is that I don't think that I came into this business to be a coach. I really came in to change the concepts of what I'm teaching about. And so I didn't necessarily think, I just knew I needed to be consistent. So I have Infusionsoft. I've sent out an email for 3.5 years every single week, if not more. I don't miss that. And I think it provides a level of consistency. The other thing that happens as a result of doing this, which I don't even know how it works, is like Jean Chatsky's office contacted me recently to be interviewed for her new book about women and money. Yesterday, Farnoosh asked me to be on her podcast. And these things just magically happen. And I can't help but think that sometimes, we just provide what's really meaningful and important to us out into the world, and the people who are supposed to work with us find us. So yeah, that's not a great strategy from one perspective, because there are a lot of frustrating moments when you invest a lot of money in marketing and you're like, I totally suck at this, which has happened so many times. But then I'm running a 6-figure business. I was just under it in my second year of business, and now exceeding it. So somehow it all comes together. So I hope that inspires some of you.
And if you grabbed a seat at one of the tables, I put some of my business cards on there. That's the front of my client gaining system. And so what I do in person is I'll pass out the business card, and then on the back of it has the details there. So we do have some time for several questions. This panel has been amazing. I'm so excited to learn from you guys as well. We've got about 10 minutes before our session officially ends, but we can probably take about 1 or 2 questions. So we'll go ahead and take it to Will.
Yeah, so first of all, you guys have been awesome. Relating with a lot of what you're saying. And what you said about the DFY, DWY, I totally get that. I'm at the point where I've got a side hustle and I've got a few small product launches that I've done, and people are like, this is amazing, I love it, teach me, do you do coaching? And my market's starting to say, like, you need to do coaching. But I have a full-time job.
Yeah.
Now, most of those people have full-time jobs too. This is their side thing. How do you recommend getting into that market while still having a full-time job? Because it's much more of a commitment. Or is that even possible?
It is. I did it. Yeah, I was coaching before I quit my job. Nights and weekends, dude. Because that's what works for everybody.
Are they able to do, are your clients okay with doing after 5 or Saturday?
If they have full-time jobs, yeah. Or from my group. Now I don't do that. I don't do, because now I have the group program. And in my group program, I do have some people who still have 9-to-5 jobs. So that's basically on demand, except for the times each quarter that we get together. And then I'll have weekend hours specifically for those people with the day jobs, and then weekday hours for everybody else, because everybody else doesn't show up on weekends.
I did do some one-on-one coaching when I was working a full-time job, and to be honest, it was brutal. I didn't know any better. I took on 10 clients while I was working full-time, and there were some days, no joke, I was getting up at 3:30 in the morning to do work, and then be at my desk at 8, and then hour lunch break and all of that stuff. Now that I'm on the other end of it, if I had to go back and do it, I probably would have utilized more of a membership model, because you get kind of the same bang for your buck. One-on-one coaching is kind of attractive because it's the prices are higher in, for your time than just the digital products. I find that the membership model is really awesome because it's affordable, but it's monthly, and so you can have more members. And so how my membership model works now, that I kind of wish I would have done when I was working, because it would have saved me a lot of really early mornings, is people pay a monthly rate. They get access to digital content that I've already created, so it's kind of like a vault situation where they kind of get access to everything. And then there's weekly check-ins where I'm checking in with them personally. So once a week, that allows me to kind of give them that personal one-on-one that they're looking for. And then I have group calls on top of that every other week, and those group calls are all in the evening. So I make sure to do them at a time when people are available, because I know that in my audience, they do work a full-time job. Another option that most people don't think about that I did do when I was working, and they're great if you can do them, are VIP days. So that's where you have a person who's looking for one-on-one coaching, but you talk to them more, and they're actually looking for a really specific result, and you're kind kind of like, well, I could coach you for 3 months on that, or we could just spend a whole day together and I can like hash out everything you need, give you access to stuff, give you a few follow-up calls, and then we're done. I love VIP days, and so I would like take a Friday off work. It got so bad that like I was out of like my paid time off, and I had to like borrow for the next year. Then I quit before the year was over, and then my job was like, yeah, you owe us money. But I would do that. I would take off Fridays and then do the VIP days. Yeah. So.
We want to take another question. Yeah, right here.
I guess I kind of sort of did that a little bit. So I have a free Facebook group that I used to grow and kind of marketing for my other products. The only caution I say with that is if you have a free mastermind group and you're already giving so much, when you do move to a paid model, you're going to have all these people who were used to getting everything from you for free, and they're going to be like, well, why do I have to pay for this now? So I made my free group where it's like the Think and Grow Chick accountability group. So really all it is it's a Facebook group. You meet other women like you, and then every Monday I would post in there, and there would be a prompt where they could like ask about their goals, and it would keep them accountable. And I would touch base in there every once in a while, but I never set the expectation that I was going to be in there every day answering everybody's questions. But I found that when I did do my mastermind, the fact that I juxtaposed it that way was attractive, because people were like, oh, I like the free group, but I'm kind of bummed that I only hear from her like once a week. I wish you would, give me personal attention. And now it's like, oh, you can get that. Come to my paid mastermind. So I do recommend doing it if you juxtapose it the right way and make sure you're not giving them everything in the free stuff.
Another question there?
I'm curious if you made use of sort of other people's content or generic content to supplement the written content, video content that you use with your coaching clients, in the sense that like help you mix so you don't have to go over the basics as a good client, right? So do you bring in like seminal text that you all read as part of your coach package, like this is something we should consume to get up to speed so we can work better, or?
Totally. I quote Russell Brunson in my group program, because it's like you said, like he didn't invent anything or come up with anything new. He just really broke it down in very simple steps. And I'll definitely recommend resources to my clients. When it comes to sales or online marketing, if I draw from somewhere, I'll tell them where it came from. I think that's the important part, is you got to tell them where it came from. Mm-hmm. Don't like try and pass it off as if you invented it. But yeah, I do that all the time. I mean, I think everybody on this panel can attest to the fact that we've all had different mentors and learned from different people, and then we just kind of create our own unique system that works for us in our markets.
Yeah, I'll add to that. When I got into my business, there were certain people that really, really helped me take things to another level. And fortunately, those programs were affiliate oriented, so they weren't cheap. But I was such a believer because they had 10 times my profitability. And I will market those sorts of things to my email list, and I'll organize events around their launches so that I can also be supporting, and I will provide coaching to the people who sign up so that they're not alone and trying to figure it out. So I think it's really, really good to notice where you're strong and when you're not as strong, and then bring those skills in when you know it's going to help your clients, and you can make money doing it.
None of my clients are local, not even one. I have them all over the country and even in some other countries.
Yeah, most of my clients are not local. I do have some local clients, but even then, we coach on the digital platforms virtually. I don't meet with anybody in person unless it's a VIP day, which I love. I'll either fly to them or they'll fly to me, but other than that.
Yeah, my clients are all over the world. Nobody's local to me anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 2 guys right now I'm working with on like that model that I'm describing, which is a pretty significant relationship, and I've never met either one of them in person. It's kind of weird.
All right, we'll take one more question. So, yeah, go ahead.
This one is actually from you, LaTisha. So I just asked for our website, and
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like in my seat right now.
This is why I hacked her.
Unique to today, and I'm currently learning, so is it something unique to today? And it's like, okay, it's gonna be 40 minutes from now, and it's new content, or I'm not gonna push up, but I'm going into this, and it's gonna be maybe something that is like pre-recorded, where, you know, if I would have signed up 40 minutes from now, it's like, oh, yeah, it's starting in 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so the quick answer is I'm Superwoman, so I'm going to change, and then I'm going to go present. And ask you to say. So, yeah, one of the joys of digital marketing is that we have great access to tools. So that is a pre-recorded session, yeah. And what's great about it is that someone can sign up at any point in time. It runs at the top of every hour. So it's called a just-in-time webinar. They have the opportunity to go onto there as soon as I meet them, as soon as they get my card, as soon as they see an ad or whatnot. They can watch it. It basically explains exactly what I do, who I am, and how I help them. So it takes that time commitment that you need to tell everybody. They ask the same questions, and you have that presentation that you can have that runs over and over again. So that's my process, and that's why I have it on there. And it's also inside of the resource guide. If you go to the link that's at the bottom of the slides, and you'll be able to download the slides there. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We will still be around the conference, so if you still have further questions, we're happy to answer them, but we really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, I do.